34.C-N3U60427G-F.
Hi, this is Dave Douglas, and here's another episode of the Greenleaf Music Podcast, A Noise from the Deep. This month's guest is Kyoko Kitamura. I read this from her Twitter bio. She is a mom, wife, vocal improviser, executive director of Anthony Braxton's Tricentric Foundation at Tricentric Foundation, and former reporter of Fuji TV Japan. As I found out in the interview, there's a lot more. She and Carl Testa have been curating and archiving the Anthony Braxton 75 Living Archive for quite some time. We began the episode with a composition from Braxton that Kyoko is singing on. You can find much of this work on Bandcamp, and at the same time, Kyoko produces and releases her own music on her own label. We'll hear some of that as well. As always, write to me about the show at podcast@greenleafmusic.com. I really appreciate it. I also appreciate listeners visiting greenleafmusic.com to check out the full catalog of music, podcasts, and sheet music. You can join us there as a subscriber and get the whole thing, including my new exclusive recording for 2020, Marching Music, which I recorded with Rafik Bhatia, Melvin Gibbs, and Sim Kane. It's all at greenleafmusic.com. Thanks for listening, and please enjoy this conversation with Kyoko Kitamura.
X5BU, 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 X5 40 X 4 2 4 2 M 2 M 4 T 2 40 X 4 2 M 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 2 40 X 4 2
Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So Kyoko, we just heard this Anthony Braxton piece that you're performing in and you're involved in helping produce, composition number 254. You talk about systems in your own work, but also how systems work in Anthony's work, because you probably know as well as anyone an inside view of that. Can you first talk about what system is happening in what we just heard?
Right. So we just heard an excerpt from composition number 254, and that is syntactical ghost trance music by Anthony Braxton. And 254 belongs to what's called the second species of the system. And the first species is sort of a series of, like a sequence of eighth note pulses. And then the second species, you have those pulses that's sort of disrupted by complex tuplets, which is what 254 belongs to. And the third species, or the accelerator class, it gets more complex. There's colors involved, and then there's graphic notation elements involved in the score. And how that works is, you heard, the part you heard is when everybody's together, and then you start hearing different sections break away into their own thing, guided by their section leaders. So what's going on is there's one person inside the ensemble who sort of looks at the entire flow. That's usually me, like bringing the ensemble in and out of the pieces. But then there's a section leaders with usually like 3 performers who also has the agency of decision making and can guide these sections into different places. And then the individual can also make decisions and go into different places. And we're all reading what's called the diamond clef. And the diamond clef means you can decide which clef to read the music in. So immediately from the get-go, each performer can bring in their own decision-making powers into the music. And I think that's very interesting, that it's not a top-down structure, but that each performer can also bring things to the music and affect the entire direction the music takes.
And so the sense that it's a system is that it does provide some guidance for how someone would read it, but at the same time, there are additional expectations of how they can interact with what's on the page.
Yes.
And those are spelled out, and that's what the system is, essentially.
Yes. The system I would describe, and I think Anthony describes it the same way. It's like
because we used to fight against the system. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
I'm just making it
but see, that's the thing. With Anthony's system, they're like railroad tracks that you can go on, but there are so many places where you can go off into different places that you might want to go onto. And in the score, you see these circles and triangles and squares, and those are like the jumping off points where you can either take or not take to move into different parts of the music. So each step of the way, you have the ability to make different decisions. And it's a very flexible system.
So is there a decider if a performer makes a certain decision? Is there someone that's there that decides whether what they're doing is outside the system or not? Or maybe as another option, it's just once you have the gig, it's trusted that you're going to use the system properly.
I think that question we have to also go before what happens to these performances, and it's in that the most of the performers who are on this recording are vocalists who have worked for many years with Anthony. So I think there's an understanding of the system, so that we don't actually need to rein anybody in or say somebody's...
So it's a community of players.
It's a community of players.
That Anthony has built up over many years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as Anthony...
As he always has.
As he always has. And he one of the things he always says is, you have to make mistakes. That the biggest mistake of all is not making mistakes. So that gives us some confidence in trusting ourselves and also trusting each other.
Yeah. I mean, and that's part of community. I remember I did that recording with Anthony. He was playing piano. This is many years ago. And we were playing standards and Charlie Parker repertoire. And I remember one of the things that was really fun and impressive was that before each take, he would say, okay, we're going to do this, and then there'll be a trumpet solo and a saxophone and piano solo, and then there'll be question mark.
Right.
So this undefined territory to come that we're going to discover, but it's on the map.
Absolutely. And then you wrote the liner notes for the Iridium box set, or you wrote
did.
an essay. And
That's also a while ago, but yeah,
Right.
I did, and I was at the shows in the audience.
And what you saw was the ghost trance music. Do you remember that? And that's right?
Closer to the beginning of when he first, I think,
Yes.
rolled it out.
Right. And that's very much the basis. Syntactical ghost trance music is sort of under the system of ghost trance music, which is what you saw. Except syntactical has syllables, which you heard on the excerpt.
And some words.
Words like west.
There were numbers.
And numbers, which in abstract form may be words, or it could be a combination of syllables, because that's what words are probably. So taken out of context in a situation like this, it sounds it doesn't necessarily make sense in terms of like making a sentence. Now, these syllables and numbers also trigger different things in other systems. So there's another system of Anthony Braxton's called Pinetop Aerial, where the syllables of syntactical ghost trance music and the numbers will trigger movements for dancers and also the shapes that the musicians will be walking in, for example.
The syllables and wordless vocals and use of vocal sounds that may or may not be words and literally narrative, shall we say, or what, how did you just say it? It was so good. That may or may not make sense in a conventional fashion. That's a big part of the development of your work,
Yes.
which I'd imagine was inspired in some sense by working with Anthony, but that you've gone great distances to develop in your own way.
Yes. Very directly, Anthony had an influence in that back in 2012, we did a duo recording, which became part of a box set. And really quickly, when we started recording, I realized that I didn't have enough vocabulary to do a duo recording with Anthony. And Anthony had all these things he could do.
You know, that's the best position to be put into, standing next to someone with that enormous range
Yes.
of stuff and then being confronted by the fact that, I better come up with something.
Absolutely. And so that recording made me think about, okay, how did Anthony come up with all these sounds? And then, I start looking into Anthony's history and how he started thinking of language music through solo saxophone improvisations, and how he took apart these different elements.
So he talks about that in the book Forces of Motion by Graham Locke. And
Yes,
if
Forces
people
in
haven't-
Motion, yes.
Forces in
Motion,
Motion.
yes.
If people haven't read that, high recommendation. 'Cause
Yes.
this is exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
So he instigated a similar search for you, would you say? Or?
Yes, and also I was always interested in voice as an instrument just because I grew up being bilingual, and I picked up another language later on. And I was always very aware of the power of language to communicate, but also to exclude people. And for people who understand words, it would mean something. But for people who do not understand a certain language, those same words could just be a continuation of syllables. And I was wondering how the voice could be used, using syllables, but taking away that layer of information that words would carry. Because maybe I think I was trying to see if there could be universal use of syllables that people can relate to personally, because it didn't carry that layer of information.
Right, so there's a cultural aspect to what you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. But it's also something that you do in your own work.
Yes.
And you've been doing a long time, obviously. But let it be noted that she made a face, so maybe not that long.
Because compared to people who I think studied music in universities, for example, my trajectory has been quite accidental. So I don't think I have as many years of music as many of my colleagues, and I'm constantly learning from my peers. And that's the other thing about that I love about being in large ensembles or large-scale projects, because it's that I can learn from my peers.
Yeah, I can see that. And at the same time, everybody's life is accidental and
That is true.
improvised. So what's not accidental is you making this decision to think about syllables and sounds and vocal sounds and removing this exclusionary element of language,
Yes.
meaning.
Yes.
And I think that, we're going to listen to some of your music now, but I think that from what I hear, informs quite a bit, not just the way the voice is used, but also the way that you compose and the way that you create ensembles and interact with other players.
Yes.
Would you say that's part of it?
Absolutely. I agree.
So let's listen to a piece from Geometry of Distance.
Yes.
So this is called Space Chat, and it's with Tomika Reed on cello, Joe Morris on bass,
On
guitar,
Uh-huh.
and Taylor Hobynum on, what does he play again?
Cornet.
Yeah,
This is
I
just,
know, I'm just kidding.
Because on the first Geometry album, he played a whole bunch of more instruments. And then the second one, he just brought his cornet. And it was, it's different.
So, but this is a release from 2019.
Yes.
So the name of the song
December. So yeah, it's just
just came out.
it
Well,
just
we're
came
now
out.
talking in January 2020.
Right.
So whenever it is that you hear this,
Right.
we've now been time-stamped.
That's good. That's
So this
right.
is called Space Chat. How
Yes.
appropriate. So that's Space Chat, and it does sound like language to me, but it's clearly not language.
That's right. I practice and I have a whole notebook of syllables and consonants and vowels, and I try to combine them. And I was trying that out. The thing about that recording is it was sort of acoustically recorded, and we didn't have headphones or anything, so that there were many aspects of the recording that I found out later once we mixed and mastered it, and it was like, oh, she's doing that, he's doing that.
Oh, I see. Interesting, yeah. Because what Joe is doing on the guitar there, it's so detuned that in the room it probably sounded quite different.
Yes, I think it did.
So back to the language thing. So you said you write out syllables and different combinations and sounds, and then this group, I think it's all improvised, right?
Yes, it's
So
all
do
improvised.
you go into the improvisation with your notebook with things to try out, or do you just practice them and get into what you're going to use, and then
Right.
the book goes out the window? And
Absolutely. I think the preparation is very important, but once you're there, you can't expect or assume, and you don't want to guide the music in any way with these people, because it's Joe Morris, Taylor Hobynum, Tomika Reed, they're master improvisers. So I am there to listen and then find a space for myself, which hopefully elevates the music, and then try to be one with each other. So no, I don't bring notebooks or anything.
And you, no words are said. There's no predetermined with this group. There's no pre-musical decision making about how it's going to
No.
proceed.
We talk a lot about food, like what we're going to eat before.
Well, I suppose that's preparation on a certain level.
That's right. That's about it. Like what food are we going to eat, but that's about it.
Sounds like my kind of band. But Taylor sounds amazing. So he's an old friend and also important for Tricentric Foundation, of course, for many years. And also for the Festival of New Trumpet Music. He was one of the people who really, was key in helping us to continue and do what we're doing. It's kind of like, it comes up with a lot of musicians of how do you prepare for the unknown? Some of the other things we're going to listen to are more composed. And so then you go in and you sort of can have a plan. And in this case, you develop your vocabulary of vocal sounds that you're going to use. And it's really interesting that you have made this decision to have those vocal sounds have the sonic information of being a language without being a language.
Yes.
And then to bring that into an improvising situation.
Yes. I think one of the key differences between voice and another instrument is the ability of the voice to make consonants and syllables. And each vocal instrument, I should say, it's so different, like with each person. Like your voice is very different from mine. Mm-hmm. And the way probably you would say something or you would enunciate something would actually be very different from the way I would do it. Mm-hmm. So we have these very individual instruments, and it's the number of the population of the earth. We all have different instruments. And I was very interested in how we can utilize the ability of each person to make syllables or consonants and vowels in different parts of the mouth and also in different ranges. And again, without trying to think of how to make that into a sentence. I think it's not explored as much as we think it may be. Mm-hmm. And it's an area of musical sounds that has so much potential. And right now on the scene, there's Faye Victor, there's Amertha. There's just so many different vocalists trying new things, and I think it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. What you said about the instrument being so different, it's really true. As a brass player, I feel like we all sound so different because everyone's lip and mouth is different. And, of course, our imagination of what a good sound should be is also different. But I think with the human voice, it's even more just connected to physicality.
Our entire body is the instrument, really.
Yeah.
And the way we are shaped and the way our mouth is shaped, and we go into like bone structure too. I mean, that's what creates a different kind of sounds we can get, and there's so much to explore.
Definitely. You were telling me about your career before being a musician, being a journalist, and being flown to, I guess, disaster zones. Is that the right? Earthquakes and volcanoes, and then this is in the pre-cell phone, pre-internet era, and so you talked about how you would get to these areas and just have to land on your feet and figure it out.
Right. I think the story that I told you was how our passports were kept by our stations, and that
by was it radio or TV?
Television. Uh-huh. So I didn't even have control over my own passport. Is that even legal? I don't know. But they had, the TV station would have my passport, and then they'd send it to the airport, and I'd go there, and then they'd fly me somewhere, kind of thing.
Why did they do that? Did they not trust you to get there on time? Or?
I think they didn't trust me to keep my passport safe.
Oh.
So probably. But they kept as far as I remember, they kept quite a few of our passports.
Well, when you go to these conflict zones, maybe there is some danger of getting cut off or losing it or something.
But once we're there,
Yeah.
we have it.
I see.
It's just
Interesting.
the station just sends it.
It's very strange. But I think I was going to ask if this getting put in these situations is analogous to your life as an improviser,
Right.
to making music, and maybe the insights that you gained having to do that are coming in handy now that you're playing so much music.
I think I had to learn from my experience as a reporter not to expect and not to assume. And that comes in very handy as an improviser because I want to go into every situation with an open mind. And it's not really about being reactive to something, because being reactive would probably make me a little slower than I need to be. But it's almost like sensing everything with every sense available and being one with the ensemble. And I think that's something we kind of had to do as a reporter. For example, if it's an earthquake or if it's a sort of a crisis situation where there's conflict, we don't know what's going on. And the information we are given, is usually such a small part of the story. And when we get there, and it's very different. And so we have to change our mindset completely. And sometimes with music, that's what you might want to do. Just try to go in with as open a mindset as possible.
Right, and be ready for anything. But
right.
Yeah, what you say about listening is really interesting. I picked a song from your Leader album, whereas the Geometry Quartet is a collaborative group, but your band is called Protean Labyrinth?
It's Tidepool Fauna.
Tidepool Fauna is the name of the group.
Right.
So Protean Labyrinth is the name
right.
of the album.
Yes.
And obviously you're playing with improvisers. It's Ingrid Lobrock and Ken Filiano and Diane Sug on drums, and a great bunch of players. But in the case of this album, I thought it was really interesting that there's quite a bit of composition.
Yes.
And predetermined elements.
Protean Labyrinth, I'm hoping to make it a series where I'm actually up in front and just digging into compositions I can write with improvising voice as the centerpiece. And that's one of the reasons I just decided to release it on my Bandcamp, because it's just mine and what I want to do, and it's like a lab for my voice. And I am so fortunate to have such amazing musicians and improvisers like Ingrid, Ken, and Dan.
Yeah, it is great. This piece is called Push 2 and Bandcamp. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's where you can find this album.
Bow, bow, wow, bow, wow, go, down, wow, bow, wow, bow, bow, wow, down, wow, bow, go, wow, go, wow, ba da da, ba da da, ba da da. Wow.
Push 2.
Yes.
So how do you write for this band?
Well, Push 2, I have another series called the Push series where I'm pushing these concepts to the fore. And Push 1 is like one note. And I'm dealing with volume and length of one note, and we improvise. And it's Push 1 is also in that album. And then there's Push 4 where I have 4 notes and all possible mathematical combinations of the directions of the pitches, like high or low. And then Push 2, I was trying to work on 2 notes and how to place 2 notes within a certain time frame and how the 2 notes would sound differently if we came in the beginning or in the middle or on the downbeat or the offbeat. So you hear these repetition of 2 notes coming in different places. And I'm actually thinking of expanding it because there's so much to learn from a combination of 2 notes, which I haven't gotten to yet in Push 2. So that will follow. So I might have to redo Push 2, keeping that element, but adding a little bit more of the etude.
Wow. So there may be a Push 2.0 coming down
maybe
2.1.
2.1, maybe, yeah. A little bit extra.
It's really extraordinary to have Diane and Ingrid and Ken.
Absolutely. There's such
the music, it's not
musicians.
Yeah, it's not super easy, but also it sounds fairly effortless. And there's a lot of space.
Right.
And the ensemble personality is really clear. I was playing this for my stepson, and he asked me if I would ask you what the song is about. And I said, well, it doesn't really work that way. But, okay, now I asked.
Well, it is about 2 notes. And,
okay, all right.
Right?
Yeah,
Etude.
right. You already
it's
answered
an etude,
it.
and it is about 2 notes. You know, now that you've asked me, it could also be between 2 people. It could be different stages of life. The number 2 is very interesting, right? So.
Yes.
And then before that, you asked me how I write for the group. And what I do is, it's the inverse of how I usually write. I actually, with Tide Pool Fauna, I actually sketch out the improvisation I want to hear first. And then I try to find ways for me to try to get that improvisation happening. And so the written parts are actually in service of the improvisation. And yeah. And of course, when we go in the studio or when we play, it doesn't come out the way I expect it. And that's part of the beauty.
Right. And you have these colleagues that are able to take it places that you wouldn't have imagined, which is always the best.
Absolutely.
You collaborate a lot with lots of different people, and you sent me this track that's unreleased. I guess it's going to come out?
I think so. He says spring. Corey Smythe. He says spring 2020, so it should be soon, I'm hoping.
And there's a lot of vocalists on this.
Yes.
I'm not going to read everyone's name, but I'm sure if people want to go to Corey Smythe's site, they can get information. It's CORYSMYTHE.
Right, and I'll just talk about a few of the vocalists that I will be working with. So this is the beauty of meeting people at different recordings and performances. So I met Michael Mayo, and he will be working with me for Taylor Hobeinev's next opera.
Oh, great.
And Raquel Klein will be working with me again for the Big Ears Festival coming up for Anthony Braxton's Thunder Music Ensemble world premiere. So
great.
Raquel and I will both be at Big Ears.
Wonderful. And so this piece, it's called Accelerate Every Voice, and it sounds like there was a lot of post-production to it, a lot of studio.
I would hope that Corey can explain it to you directly at some point, because I don't exactly know what he did, but there was so much preparation for all of us before we went into the studio. So I don't know how much post-production he did. I'm sure he did.
I will ask him
Yes.
on a future episode.
That would be amazing.
Corey, I'm coming for you. Okay, so here we'll just listen to a little excerpt of this as yet unreleased Corey Smythe track.
So this was it was really difficult for me. It was very difficult music because he was writing in microtones, and also because each syllable was very specified. And these are the kind of music I love to try because it really pushes boundaries and it just challenges me. And I don't know how well I did, and I don't know how much production work went in so that he could correct all the wrong stuff that I did. But you can ask that when you have it in the future.
I'm sure that'll be kept a secret in any case. But yeah, lots of microtonal stuff, and the rhythm is very precise.
Yes.
I wouldn't have imagined. Yeah, but now that you think of it, the syllables.
He wrote
all
it all
spelled
down.
out.
He wrote it all down, every single one.
For the vocal percussionist as well.
Yes. As far as I know, when I saw the scores,
Yeah.
yes, he had written everything down.
Wow.
And
Well,
and
it's
for
a powerful piece.
yes, Michael Mayo and I had more of an improvising role. And that was also super challenging for me to work with this music and to figure out how to improvise without stepping out of his vision. So I don't know if I did it well, but and you can ask Corey.
But it's also, that's a part of everything that we're talking about, inventing a role for yourself, figuring out who you are, finding a place for your uniqueness to fit in larger structures. And in the music world, that wasn't always your world. You had other careers before.
Yes, but one thing I'm always careful about is to be respectful of the vision of the composer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I struggle sometimes. And as an improvising vocalist, to make sure that the music stays within the vision of the person who wrote it, because it's so easy to bring it to what I normally do, and that doesn't do anybody any favors. So I'm constantly working to see. That's where the paucity of the vocabulary also comes in, where I kind of need to make sure that I have enough vocabulary and enough things that I can do with my voice for these different situations and still make it sound like it's part of the composer's vision as well. It's part of me, and then it's musical.
And you have a really unique background. So I'd imagine there are times where finding that balance can be quite challenging in the various musics that you play.
Yes.
I mean, in some sense, it's part of like figuring out who you are.
Absolutely.
As a human being.
Absolutely. And I think it's easy to live compartmentalized. For example, I think I studied jazz, and there was a time where, okay, I will try to sing standards, and then I will try to improvise over the chord changes, And then there's this other thing that I was doing, which was much more outside of that. And all these things were different, compartmentalized, and used in different situations. I think finally it's coming together in a way where I feel a little bit more unified. And I think that's, as you say, I think my various backgrounds in journalism or translating or all that.
But also being a dual national,
Dual
which you
national,
mentioned,
absolutely.
I think maybe not when we were recording, but, having both identities.
Right. I think I've always led very different compartmentalized lives, I feel. But the past few years, it's been coming together. And a big part of it, I think, has been tricentric, because when I work with tricentric, I have to utilize every skill that I have, from whether it's publicity or, producing a festival or doing accounting. These things come with the music, and somehow it feels okay to be this one person who does these different things.
Really interesting. It's funny that you said that, because one of the things that I wanted to ask you was how that experience of finding your own music has guided you as the executive director of Anthony Braxton's Tricentric Foundation. And in a way, you kind of answered it. But the fact that all of those different hats that you have to wear, are all part of the music.
Yes.
Is the big thing there.
I think. Yes, I think so. And I think as a musician right now and today, in this day and age, we can't ignore the business. And we can't ignore the fact that there are so many things going on to support our lives as musicians, and also to work together and possibly organize ourselves in a way so that we become stronger and sustainable.
Yeah.
And Tricentric has shown me at least hope that it's possible.
It's a great organization.
Thank you.
It's amazing. The Anthony Braxton 75 Living Archive, a big part of what you're working on right now, right?
Yes. We realized the amount of material we have. Carl Testa who's also a great musician and who performs with us, and he's the director of publishing at Tricentric, and he has really single-handedly inventoried what we have in our space in New Haven, and we think we have 20,000 pieces of paper in the form of 400 or more scores, and then we have ephemera, and we have audio. So little by little, we are trying to digitize all that and put it in a secure space, because I think it's the treasure of the world, and we need to protect it.
Absolutely. Is it on Bandcamp that a lot of this music has been going public?
New Braxton House Records?
New Braxton House.
Yes, we have albums there. And if you go to our website, we also sell scores. And
Great.
there are pages for resources, from interviews to videos and whatever.
That is so great. Just to go back your music a little bit, I wanted to play something from Armadillo and Sunset Park from, I guess, 2012?
Yes, it was recorded in 2011.
So it's from the album Armadillo and Sunset Park, released, I guess, in 2012, recorded in 2011. And so, as I've learned, this is you on voice and piano.
That's right.
Which, do you still do that, or?
I am currently studying counterpoint and Schomburg harmony with Paul Caputo, who's a teacher in New York City. So for that,
Great.
I use piano. Otherwise, less and less. I occasionally would play for like dancers, but that's about it.
It moves, it flows, it stops, it grows, Precious thing, so fickle and sweet. It's in your head, in your heart, eating you inside out, alive. It's here again. It calls your name, laughing while you run, hide, deny. You thought you were safe. This time around you let yourself believe what could have been.
Well, Kyoko, it's been so nice talking to you. I learned so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I think the work that you're doing at the foundation is awesome. But to get to talk to you and hear all this music, it's been really inspiring. So
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was great talking to you, too.
Thank you. So we're going to end this show with Charlie Brown's Wandering Eye.
Charlie Brown met Garfield on the way to school. Stepped on his tail, it was not cool. Garfield ran up the tree, then jumped down and furiously scratched Charlie Brown's eyes out. Charlie Brown met Garfield on the way to school, stepped on his tail, it was not cool. Snoopy tried to kill the cat but fell flat, salivated over Charlie Brown's eyeballs. Charlie's eyes rolled down the street, spinning fast, spinning slow. Always on the go, Charlie could not see. A wandering eye gets you nowhere. Don't let it roll too far. And they're off. Charlie Brown's wandering eye leading by a length and a half, with Garfield in second place, Snoopy in third. Wait, Snoopy has stopped. Snoopy has stopped to smell another dog spot. Moving into the backstretch, it's Charlie Brown's wandering eye still in the lead. Garfield in second place, but slowing down. Garfield smells lasagna. He seems to be out of the race. Coming into the home stretch, it's going to be close. Charlie Brown's wandering eye leading by an eyeball. Snoopy in second place, Charlie Brown in third, and at the wire, it's Snoopy. Snoopy has caught up to Charlie Brown's wandering eye and, oh no, Snoopy just swallowed Charlie Brown's eyeball. Charlie Brown met Garfield on the way to school, stepped on his tail, it was not cool. Snoopy tried to kill the cat but fell flat, salivated over Charlie Brown's eyeballs. Ba-dee-da-dee-dee-da. Charlie's eyes rolled down the street.
Hey, this is Dave. Thanks for listening to the Greenleaf Music Podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Send me an email. Talk to you soon.